Afternoon, everyone.
Good. Good afternoon.
Okay, so let me share the screen here. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to install and uninstall OPI. Most of the errors that you're going to be encountering with OPI will revolve around incorrect configuration. Basically, it's set up incorrectly, or this application has become damaged or corrupted as a result of a power outage, for example, and it is no longer operating properly, or we can no longer access it. And so there is no other option but to uninstall and reinstall it. So I will show you how to do that also. So uh, OPI is installed on 3700 and E7. We're going to be using the E7 here as an example, but the procedure is the same. Uh, and the software has to be installed in the proper order in order for it to install properly. And the first step would be Java, and the version has to be um, exactly this one here. Otherwise, the applications that depend on it, which is the MySQL database and the OPI interface, will not function properly. So we're going to run this first. So if this application here is damaged, or the incorrect version, then neither the database nor the interface will function. So not just any version of Java will work. It has to be this particular one. So if the customer accidentally updates it, usually a security update will be the cause of that, then it will cause the interface to not start at all. Um, and that's a sure indicator that Java has been modified in some way. So all you do is uninstall the updated version and reinstall this version here. You can see it's straightforward, nothing complicated about it. We move on now to the database. So Micros will not use its own database to store credit card information. It's going to use this database here. That's the purpose of it. Okay, we accept the agreement. And we're going to use the server option, not the development option, because that's going to be functioning as a database server for the OPI interface. We accept the default settings here. Again, we're using this as a database server, so we select that. Named pipe. This is how it's going to talk to the POS software. And here. Now, both teams, the North team and the South team, have different credentials. I'm going to consolidate them into a document that shows the possibilities for both installation types. But there's different usernames and passwords that are used. You could use anything really, as long as you document it in secret server and someone can find out, because that's a common cause of not being able to access these applications. Failure to document them. But we do have standards, and I will provide a document afterwards with both those standards. Right now, I'm just going to say, well, the root here, the password, the name for the database server will always be root. This is not, that's not, there is no difference there. And the password will probably be different. I'm just going to I'm just going to put anything in here. It doesn't matter. Um, Again, as long as you hold on. Keep the default settings for this. No plugins or extensions are used, and we finalize the configuration and start the database server. Completed without any errors. There may be, during this installation step, there may be an error associated with the fact that this application depends on the .NET framework. If that's the case, you'll be notified that it cannot proceed with the installation unless the framework is installed, but the required framework is part of the installation. So you won't have to track it down and install it yourself. It'll just say this component needs to be installed. Do you wish to install it? You accept it, and it'll go through the steps that we just went through. In this case here, since I've done this demonstration several times, the correct framework is installed, and so I wasn't asked about installing it. And that's it. So now the foundation is laid for the installation of OPI, which is what allows um, the Micros POS systems, both the 3700 and the E7, and Symphony too, but it's built in. It's named the Symphony Payment Interface, but it's the same thing. It's just built into the Symphony product as opposed to being a standalone application. So this is how the POS communicates with third-party credit card processing software. So our software, the one that we developed, is the Universal Transaction Gateway, but there are others. For Freedom Pay would be an example. Elevon would be another example. And this is to facilitate the communication between the two systems, because otherwise vendors of credit card software would have to be intimately familiar with the design of the POS software, in particular the database, and therefore subject to breaking their software every time Micros uh, updates their software. So in order to insulate them from the changes that are done to the POS, you have an interface that lies between them and that changes less frequently. And as long as the vendors submit to the communication protocol of the interface, it doesn't matter what happens behind the interface, and their software will continue to function. So that's the purpose of the payment interface that Oracle developed here. So we're going to run it. Okay, complete installation. Okay, here's a potential error. So it's telling us that the size of the application exceeds the size of the hard disk on which I want to install it. That's not a big deal because it doesn't have there is no specific drive it has to be on. So even though the C drive will not allow me to install it there, the D drive probably will. So I'm going to use the D drive, and it advanced. So there's sufficient space there. I'm going to install it. Okay. As you can see, it's able to run on multiple database servers. The one we use is the one created by Oracle, which is MySQL, which we had previously installed. Okay, the name is going to be localhost. That's just basically the an alternative for the 127.0.0.1, which is the IP address of the machine on which is hosting the interface, which is the one we're installing it on. So we leave that as the default. The port, we leave the default also. Okay, so now we're attempting to connect to the database that we have installed previously, MySQL, and we know that the root, the highest level user is root, the equivalent of the administrator on Windows. And here the password that I had previously made. What is it? Okay, here we're going to create a user for the database. So the root user is the one that allows the um, OPI to connect to the database. But this user here is the allows you to administer the application. So when you sign into OPI and check out the configuration settings or modify them in any way, you're going to use this user here, which is also going to vary depending on whether it's a southern installation or another northern installation. Again, doesn't matter as long as you document in the secret server, but there are standards that are used by both teams. I will provide a list of those names later. So we here use Micros admin. The southern team uses OPI admin. Okay, so we were able to connect to the database. That's good. Okay, configuration was successful. Okay, now we're going to create a super user. And I'm going to provide a document also afterwards that has all of the steps that I'm going through now with images so that you can refer to that also in addition to this video. All right, that worked. Okay, so basically now the system has been installed, the interface, and now it's a matter of configuring it. Uh, First is how OPI talks to Micros. We already saw how OPI talks to the database by way of the root user and the password. But now OPI has to communicate with Micros, and it does so by means of this passphrase here. I'll provide that passphrase also. Again, as long as it's documented, that's the most important thing. Because this is what's used to allow OPI to talk to Micros, and if it's for some reason has become, they're not synchronized, then you're going to get the OPI communication failure, the classic that indicates that the passphrase needs to be reset. Because the password is set in OPI, obviously there must be a location in Micros that also is aware of that passphrase so that the two systems can communicate. That's going to be the credit card utility. I'll show you a little bit later where it is that that's done. And that's another possible cause of error if that location's password has been changed in any way, but not changed in OPI. They have to be the same. So we're going to install here for POS. Okay, put the passphrase that we just did. All right. So basically, all of this this is like a preliminary that configuration screen that they give you. All of this is already accessible within the OPI, but they're just giving you the option to quickly do it before you actually access the application. So we can do it here, or we can do it in OPI too. Basically, middleware indicating that it is a software interface, not a hardware interface. Terminal would be what used to be used by Merchant Link. They used to have these physical devices, the transaction links that would operate in a similar manner as what UTG is, what OPI is doing. And so, but since we're doing software, we're going to be using middleware. The IP address of the server, whatever it happens to be. That's what ours usually is. The port has to be port 84. If the port is not port 8084, then the communication will fail, regardless of whether the IP address is correct. That's another common cause of malfunction. So the reason I'm showing you how it's properly installed is because almost all errors are the result of trouble coming up with ideas of what could be wrong, why something is malfunctioning. You're not going to have any ideas of why if you don't know how it's supposed to be set up properly. So having an idea of all of the ideas of how it's properly set up will give you ideas for what could be wrong when something fails. So here again, we're going to create the configuration of the type of system that's is being installed on, which is the 3700. Merchant ID, you get this from Titan. This is going to be the shift for serial. Something. I'm just going to put any numbers here. Merchant name, merchant city, merchant state, as a car, whatever it happens to be. All right. Right now, we're pretty much done here, but we're not done with the configuration because there's a couple more steps to do here. So we're going to go to the folder where the interface was installed. We're going to launch the configuration application. Okay, microsadmin was the user that I created. Okay, made a mistake there. Okay, there. So I made a mistake there. And sometimes uh, we won't know what the password is, either because the system was, sometimes if it's damaged due to a power surge or something like that, it won't accept the password because the application has become damaged. Or sometimes, the incorrect password or the non-standard password was used and never documented. That's why I say, even if you use a password that's not standard, as long as you document it, we can get into the system. But OPI doesn't have any back doors to access it if the password is not known. It has to be uninstalled and reinstalled. And that's why I'm going to show you how to uninstall it when I'm done with this, because sometimes that's the final resort. So as you can see, that we had already done this previously when we finished the installation. We could have done it in here if we wanted to. but we did it after we installed it. Same thing here, the passphrase. We did it before we accessed this application, so there's no need to do that. And this also we did it. The only thing you would have to enable here would be the top up authorization, which allows you to have multiple credit card authorizations on a check. As you go adding items to the check, you can reauthorize the card as many times as you need. That's the option that allows that. We save that, and that's it. So if we examine the services of the operating system, you'll see that OPI is running in the background, which is what the objective was. Okay, MySQL is also running, which is a requirement for the operation of that interface. And that's it. That's how you do it. So as long as you know all of those steps thoroughly, then whenever there's a malfunction, you can come up with ideas of what it is that could be causing the malfunction. Now let's do the uninstallation, because as I said, sometimes there is no other choice but to remove the software from the system and reinstall it because of damage or because of inability to access it. So just as the order in which we installed the software has to be reversed. You have to do it in the reverse manner because of the dependencies. OPI depends on MySQL because when we created those users, database tables were created, called schemas. They were created to store the information related with this particular installation. So if we were to delete or uninstall the database before we did the uninstallation of the interface, then the interface would uninstallation would fail because they would say, I'm looking for the tables that I created when I was installed, and I can't find them. So it's going to be very, very difficult to get rid of. It's hard to remove programs from an operating system because this program is installed with the Windows installer. Basically, it's like a built-in software that allows you to install software and more easily, so that software designers don't have to create their own installation and uninstallation software. But the downside of that is that if it can't find what it thinks it should need to uninstall software, it won't do it. It just won't do it, and then it's very difficult to try to pry it loose. Can be done, but you don't want to go down that route. So just do everything in the reverse order. The last software we installed was the interface, so we're going to uninstall that first. Okay. You see that it's telling me if I want to remove all the features. Yes, I do. There's the schema. These are all the tables, as I said, that it had done. For this, I have to reconnect to the database. Okay, successfully uninstalled the interface. Okay, and now we're going to go and uninstall the database. Now, the database comes with its own installer. It did not use the Windows installer. You can see here it says the installer. So obviously, logically, we cannot uninstall the installer before we uninstall the software. Otherwise, we're going to run into the same problem I was describing with the OPI interface. It won't be able to be removed. So we're going to do the database first. Okay, the database is running in the background. It's asking me, do I want to remove, do I want to stop it? Yes, I do. It's not as common to have to remove the database as it is to have to remove the interface, but there are occasions, especially due to electrical phenomena like power outages and stuff like that that will corrupt the database and require that you uninstall it too. So that's why I'm showing you this. But there's nothing complicated about it. It's pretty straightforward. And of course, Java may have to be uninstalled because an update may have caused the version to change, which will cause the dependent software to fail also. So we're going to uninstall that too on some occasions. That's also straightforward. Okay, now the final step, we need to do a little cleanup operation here because when we're going to reinstall the software, we want to make sure that it's a clean slate and there's nothing pre-existing that will cause the installation to fail. In particular, with respect to the database, I'll demonstrate in a moment what could cause that to fail. So we're going to see here. So the interface actually, okay. Sometimes the Oracle, I installed it here. Was it the database? No, it was the interface. Yeah. So the interface was telling me that there was no space on C, so we installed it on D, and it took away the folder. Sometimes it leaves the folder empty because everything was removed. You can keep that folder there if you want, or you can remove it. That's not a big deal. However, the database will create a folder that needs to be removed in order to be reinstalled. And if it's present, it will retain some information, and which will cause reinstalling to fail. OPI's folder uh, may be there, but it will be empty, so it won't cause any issues when you're reinstalling. However, the database, the MySQL database, will cause issues because it will have information still there. But that folder in which it is stored is hidden. So we need to come here and say show hidden items. You'll see that when I do that, there's a folder here that was previously hidden named program data. In that folder, you'll see that there's a MySQL folder. And it does have information in it, as you can see. Right? So this is going to conflict with an attempt to reinstall it. So this has to be deleted in order for a reinstallation to succeed. I'm going to do that. Okay, and now the system has been returned to the starting place where we began, and we're ready to reinstall all of the software. And that's all. Any questions? Yes, Andy. And well, Andy first. What's up, Andy?
You were going to show us where in 37 will match the passphrase.
Oh,
And
good
my
point.
question to you would be is how do we do that for Symfony also?
Well, in Symfony, that's a whole nother animal there. You have to go into the EMC to do that. It's 3700. I'll show you right now. Okay, let me just show you the 3700. So 3700, you go into the credit card utility. It's going to be a tab called OPI when you install OPI, right? And right here is where that passphrase will be. This is the one that we use. Again, don't worry too much about the specifics. The document will demonstrate which one is used for the corresponding south or north side. And again, as long as it's documented in Secret Server, that's the main thing. So you're going to save this. When you save this, it's going to tell you that you need to go to diagnostic here, basically, select the driver, and then this system needs to be rebooted in order for the driver's functions to appear here. They're not appearing here, but one of the functions will be update passphrase. You select update passphrase, you say begin test, and it'll update it. Okay?
I'm familiar with that. You showed me before.
Okay. So just one thing here now, E7 doesn't have a separate component for credit cards, as you all know. It's built into the configurator, but the concept is the same. You will go into, there will usually be a button on the manager screen saying named update passphrase, and that's how you do it on the E7. Symphony is a different thing. You have to go into ENC, same concept, but you have to go into the EMC to do it.
The CA driver.
Yeah, exactly.
And I saw in the initial folder that you had open with all the files, there was a CA driver there.
All right. Okay. I wanted to keep this general. I'll go into it now. I want to keep this general so that it would apply to both the E7 and the 3700. But this is a good observation by you, Andy. So, in distinction to the E7, the 3700 requires that you install a credit card driver in addition to the 3 pieces of software that we installed. E7 does not. E7 just requires these 3 pieces, and it will process credit cards in conjunction with the UTG without a problem. 3700 will not do this. It requires that this driver here be installed. That driver then will cause this to appear in the credit card utility. Okay,
Nice.
but of course, sometimes it doesn't. The functions associated with the driver are not visible until you restart the system. I installed this morning, but I didn't want to restart this. I didn't restart the system. If I were to restart it now, the functions would appear, and that's how you would get the ability to update the passphrase, which, as you know, causes issues with communications when it's not synchronized with OPI. Unable to communicate with OPI is caused by that. In addition, for the 3700 system, because it requires a driver to be installed separately like this, there will also be a possible error that occurs that says no credit card driver installed. That's unique to the 3700 because only this system requires you to install a driver. If that's the case, that means either this driver here is damaged for some reason and needs to be uninstalled and reinstalled, or was never installed at all.
That's why I asked. We had another dealer replace a server and drop the computer without that, and I got that error, and that's how I learned.
Excellent observation, Andy. That's exactly the cause of the problem, the missing or damaged driver. I think Michael had a question also, right?
Yes, thank you. When you were entering the merchant ID earlier, you said that was the Shift4 serial number. I just want to confirm that we put the Shift4 serial number there and not the 0021 or 0022 number.
No, it's a Shift4 serial. Really, in reality, this has to
This-
be mapped on the back end on an application named My Portal. So, and I honestly, sometimes there's no consistency. I've seen it sometimes be the MID, and I've sometimes seen it be the Shift4 serial, and sometimes you see it with the generic 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All of those numbers are possibilities because in reality, the mapping on the back end is what's important, and this just has to match that. It should be the Shift4 serial.
Okay.
Well, that's what it should be, but like I said, sometimes it'll be other those other possibilities. If it is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, the generic, which should never really, nobody should be using that. We used to use that initially before we were part of Shift4. Then you're gonna need an OPI access token in UTG because obviously that number doesn't represent any merchant. It's a fake number, so you're going to need an access token to get UTG to operate correctly. But you don't want to go that route because we already know that's not the right way to do it. You're going to use basically the serial or the MID to configure the OPI system. Joshua?
Great information there. And I do want to say that I have had payment support tell me otherwise, that we should always use the mid because it identifies the merchant. But I'm used to using the serial, so It's to each his own, honestly, I feel like. But as long as we get it done and done right, I prefer not to use the mid because that is something that goes directly to the customer as their account number. If you use a shift for serial, it should be fine. But in most cases, yes, it'll work. But if they are a central location with multiple sites and under one serial, the reporting can be different potentially.
You're right. You're right about that. You're right about that. Uh, I agree that the ID would be optimal, but there's sometimes that the ID doesn't work because of the mapping on the back end, and the only way you're going to get it to work is either you get somebody that has access to my portal to change it, or you just comply with whatever they happen to have configured it initially, which could be the serial, and that's the only way it's going to work. So, but your observation is valid. Okay, if there are no more questions, I guess we can conclude this session.
Thanks, Anthony.
Thank
You're,
you.
you're welcome.